The wind had worked one of the trellis posts halfway out of the ground by sunrise. Marissa Cole found it leaning toward the service road. The wire above it pulled so tight it gave off a low metal hum. 2 young apple trees beside it had bent in the same direction. Their new branches pointed east, as though someone had dragged a hand across the entire row during the night. 50 yards away, behind 2 lines of old trees marked for removal, another young block stood almost straight. A 3-man crew was already tying orange ribbon around the old trunks. Marissa stepped over a coil of irrigation hose and raised one hand. "Hold up!" The crew leader turned. "We're only marking today." "I know." She walked him to the damaged post and pressed her boot against the loose soil around its base. A narrow gap had opened where the post had shifted. Then, she pointed toward the block behind the old trees. "Same age trellis. Same night. Less damage." The man studied both sections. "Could be the slope. Could be. Could be weaker posts over here. Could be that too." He waited for her to move. Marissa pulled the short pencil from the brim of her cap and wrote the row number on the back of her work glove. "I need the morning. I don't have the authority to give you the morning." "Then call Grant." The crew leader sighed, but he reached for his phone. Marissa stayed beside the damaged post while the wind moved through the orchard in uneven pushes. The old trees no longer produced enough fruit to justify what they cost to prune and maintain. Grant Halverson had 3 years of records proving that. What Marissa had was a difference she had noticed too late and could not yet explain. By 8 o'clock, she was back inside the farmhouse, knocking mud from one boot while her 6-year-old daughter searched for the other. "It was by the door," Marissa said. "It's not by the door. It was there last night." June opened the hall closet and stared into it without moving anything. Caleb sat at the kitchen table with a permission slip trapped beneath his cereal bowl. He was 10, old enough to read the email open on Marissa's laptop, and young enough to pretend he was not doing it. "Are they cutting Dad's rows?" he asked. Marissa moved a tractor repair bill off the permission slip and signed her name. "They aren't Dad's rows. He planted them. He worked on them. That's what I meant." June came back wearing 1 boot and 1 sock. "If the old trees barely grow apples, why don't you take them out?" Marissa looked through the kitchen window toward the western edge of the orchard. "Because I don't know yet what taking them out will cost." Her phone buzzed. Grant's message was short. He had told the crew to stop until noon. He also reminded her that the lease expired after harvest. If she kept delaying the replanting plan, he would consider another tenant. Marissa read it twice. The farmhouse came with the orchard lease. Losing one meant losing the other. She owned the old tractor in the shed, though the bank still owned part of it. She owned her tools, several used harvest bins, and every production record she had kept since Daniel died. She did not own the trees. She did not own the ground beneath them. Caleb had stopped eating. "Are we moving?" "I'm trying to renew the lease." "That isn't what I asked." Marissa closed the laptop. "No, it isn't." The school bus sounded its horn from the county road. June finally found her missing boot under the couch. By 10, Grant's pickup was parked beside the small office attached to the farmhouse. A second vehicle stood behind it, silver and clean enough that Marissa distrusted it before the driver stepped out. Grant was 52, broad through the shoulders, with the careful expression of a man who had learned that every sentence could turn into an expense. He had inherited the orchard with his younger sister 5 years earlier. Neither of them farmed it. The second man introduced himself as Victor Ramos. "Orchard consultant," Grant said. "He's reviewing the replanting schedule." Marissa looked at Victor. "You already have somebody lined up to run this place?" Victor glanced at Grant, then back at her. "I'm not here to run anything. You're here because he wants the old rows gone. I'm here because he asked what they're costing." Inside the office, Grant opened a folder on the desk. The numbers were real. The southern row had produced less fruit 3 seasons in a row. Pruning hours had increased. Several trees had dead limbs. The middle row had wide gaps where trees had been removed and never replaced. Marissa knew all of it. Grant tapped the page with one finger. I'm not asking you to like the plan. I'm asking whether you can operate under it. You hired someone to tell you what you already wanted. Victor did not react. How did you measure the difference in wind? He asked. I didn't. Then right now you have damage in one block, and less damage in another. I have eyes. So do I. That doesn't make it a test. Marissa folded her arms. Grant closed the folder. You have 7 days. Show me something I can use, or the trees come out. 7 days isn't enough. It was enough time to answer my emails. That landed because it was true. Grant stood. And so you're not surprised later. Another grower has asked about taking over the lease next season. Marissa kept her face still. Grant had not threatened to throw her out that day. He had not raised his voice. He had simply reminded her that he had choices. She had fewer. That afternoon, she drove into town and bought 3 small wind sensors, 2 mounting poles and a pack of batteries she could not comfortably afford. By 4, she had placed 1 sensor behind the old western row, 1 in the open block and 1 near the service road. Caleb followed her with a clipboard. Read me the number on that post, she said. W16. Write it beside sensor 2, he wrote slowly, pressing hard enough to tear the paper. June sat on an overturned bucket with a box of colored pencils. All the trees look the same, she said. They don't, Caleb answered. They're all brown. They have tags. That doesn't count. Marissa was tightening a clamp when June knocked over the plastic bag holding the spare labels. They scattered through the grass. June. Her daughter froze. Marissa heard how sharp her own voice had become. She climbed down from the ladder. I'm sorry. That wasn't your fault. June crouched to pick up the labels anyway. Are we losing the house? Marissa looked toward Caleb. He was studying the clipboard as if nothing else existed. I'm working on the lease. That means maybe. Yes, Marissa said. It means maybe. That evening, the first readings showed exactly what she wanted to see. Wind speed behind the old trees was much lower than in the open block. She photographed the displays and emailed the results to Grant before she could stop herself. Victor arrived the next morning. He stood beside the first sensor, looked at the old row and then at the packing shed 20 feet away. This one is partly sheltered by the building. The trees are between it and the wind. So is the building. He walked to the second unit and crouched beside it. This one is too low. It's measuring wind. It's measuring something. We can't compare it to the others. Heat rose into Marissa's face. The difference is still obvious. Victor stood. I can see a pattern. That's not the same as proving the cause. Grant called an hour later. The tree crew needed a new schedule. Marissa now had 4 days. She stayed in the office after the call, staring at the email she had sent too quickly. The numbers had not failed her. She had failed the numbers. She had wanted proof badly enough to stop checking whether it was good proof. The county extension office returned her message before lunch. Dr. Priya Nanduri arrived the following morning in a dusty sedan with a folding measuring pole and no interest in helping Marissa win an argument. Show me what you think is happening, she said. Marissa walked her through the damaged block, the sheltered block, and the old rows. Priya asked about wind direction, trellis age, soil moisture, elevation, and tree variety. Marissa could answer some questions. On others, she had to say she did not know. It helped more than pretending. Priya moved all 3 sensors. One went behind the western row. Another went into the exposed block at the same height. The third went into a comparison block with similar trellis construction. Same recording periods, Priya said. Same height, track direction as well as speed. How long do we need? Longer than Grant gave you. Marissa almost laughed. Priya looked toward the old trees. These may be reducing wind in a limited area. That does not mean all of them are healthy. It does not mean they are the best possible windbreak. We have to separate the function from the condition of the trees. That afternoon, Marissa called Beth Larkin at the packing house. Beth sent delivery records from the past 3 seasons, separated by orchard block. The exposed western section had produced a larger share of second-grade fruit during 2 windy years. The records did not explain why. Marissa searched her maintenance folders and found labor notes from Daniel's last season. More clips replaced in the open block. More time spent tying young trees upright. More repairs after strong wind. Still not proof by itself. Leon Pruitt, who farmed pears across the road, stopped when he saw her carrying folders between the office and the shed. "Daniel used to complain about those west winds," he said. "Did he ever say the old rows protected the new block? He said he wanted to replace them with something better before taking them out. You remember when?" Leon looked toward the orchard. "No. Did he write it down?" "Not that I know of." Marissa waited. Leon shrugged. "Sorry. It's fine." And it was. Memory could point toward an answer. It could not prove one. The wind rose the next afternoon, steady enough to move the upper branches, but not strong enough to cause new damage. Marissa checked the sensors every hour. The speed behind the western row remained lower. The open block took the wind more directly. The comparison block fell somewhere between them. Priya reviewed the readings that evening. "There's an effect," she said. "Local, under the conditions we measured." Marissa let out a breath. Then Priya walked her to the southern row. A large dead limb had split near the trunk. 2 trees had cavities low in the wood. Another leaned away from its support wire. "This row should not stay because you need it to be useful," Priya said. "What about the middle row? Too many gaps." "It may slow some wind, but I would not build a long-term plan around it." Marissa looked toward the western row. "And that one? Healthier. Better density. It may be worth keeping as temporary protection." Temporary. The word bothered her until she understood why. She had been trying to prove that Grant could not remove the old trees. The evidence was telling her something else. Some of them needed to go. The real mistake would be removing their function before something else stood in their place. She called Victor the next morning. "I want to walk the rows again." He arrived after lunch. They marked the unsafe trees first. Marissa did not argue when he showed her the split limbs or the hollow trunks. Near the southern end, Victor rested one hand against a tree Daniel had grafted years earlier. "This one should come out," he said. "It still produces. Not enough to justify the risk. We can brace it." "For how long?" Marissa looked at the graft union. Daniel had been proud of that tree. The fruit had never been as good as he hoped, but he had kept working on it anyway. Victor studied her face. "Would you keep it, if his name wasn't attached to it?" She turned toward him. "You don't get to ask me that." "You're right." He stepped back. Marissa hated him for being careful after saying it. That night, Caleb stood at the kitchen window watching the orange ribbons move in the dark. "They're really taking Dad's rows?" "Some of them. He wouldn't want that." Marissa rinsed a plate and set it in the rack. "You don't know that. He planted them. Your dad planted trees. He didn't ask us to stop making decisions." Caleb looked down at the table. Marissa dried her hands. "I don't know what he would choose now," she said. "I wish I did." That was as close as she could come without lying. The next morning, she wrote a different plan. Remove the dangerous southern row. Do not depend on the broken middle row. Keep the healthier western row for 2 more seasons. Plant a properly designed windbreak beyond it. Replant the orchard in stages so the entire western edge was never exposed at once. Review the plan after the 3rd year. The proposal required a 5-year lease to make financial sense. Grant gave her 3 days. The other grower had offered to take over after harvest, pay most of the replanting costs, and sign a longer agreement without asking Grant to contribute to a windbreak. "I can't ignore that," Grant said over the phone. "You also can't compare the plans as if they do the same thing. I can compare what they cost me." Marissa opened a new email. She wrote 3 paragraphs about Daniel, the orchard, and the fact that she had kept it running after he died. Then she deleted all of it. She called Victor. "I need 2 hours of your time." "For what?" "Replanting sequence and cost categories. You want me to help you negotiate against Grant?" I want to pay you to tell me whether the plan works." There was a pause. "I can do that." It was the first time Marissa had asked for help before exhausting herself pretending she did not need it. Victor's estimate was not designed to make her happy. A new windbreak would take years to become useful. Some orchard blocks would lose production during transition. The western row could stay temporarily, but it would still require maintenance. The plan was slower than removing everything. It was also less likely to expose all the young trees at once. The wind warning came the night before the lease meeting. After dinner, Marissa checked the western trellis and found the 2 posts she had meant to repair still on her list. She had delayed them while measuring wind, sorting records, and trying to do 3 people's work. They had survived the last storm. She told herself they could survive one more. By midnight, one had not. The gusts came down the slope in hard, uneven bursts. A wire tore loose in the open block. Several young trees leaned. One support post pulled far enough that part of the row began to sag. Caleb appeared in the mudroom wearing his coat over his pajamas. "I can help." "No. I know how to hold the light. You're staying inside." "But you said—" "I said no." She took both children across the road to Leon's house and returned with him after the strongest gusts passed. By daylight, the damage was clear but limited. The open block had taken the worst of it. The western row had reduced some of the force behind it, but one of the failed posts was Marissa's responsibility. She wrote that into the cost sheet. Leon helped reset the trellis. Victor sent the final replanting sequence. Beth resent the packing records in a cleaner format. Priya confirmed what the measurements supported and what they did not. None of them came to the lease meeting to speak for her. Grant sat at the farmhouse office desk with his sister Denise on a video call. Victor sat to one side as the consultant. Grant slid a contract across the desk. 1 year, he said. We continue with the original removal plan. We review everything again after harvest. Marissa did not open it. I answered your email late, she said. My first wind test was bad. I left 2 weak posts on a repair list too long, and one failed last night. The southern row needs to come out. Part of the middle row does too. Grant glanced at Victor. Marissa placed several photographs on the desk. Here is what the corrected measurements show. Wind speed dropped behind the western row during both test periods. Here are the repairs by block. Here are packing house records from 2 windy seasons. None of those prove the old trees caused every difference. Grant leaned back. Then what exactly are we doing? Showing risk. She turned to the phased plan. If we remove everything before replacement protection is established, you reduce maintenance now and increase exposure in the new blocks. If we stage the work, the transition takes longer, but the risk is spread over several seasons. She placed 2 cost columns in front of him. The first assumed immediate removal and replanting. The second kept the western row temporarily, removed unsafe trees, established a new windbreak, and replaced orchard blocks in stages. Grant studied the figures. The other tenant isn't asking me to pay for this. The other tenant is asking for enough control to make his investment worth the money. He's offering more cash, and I'm offering a plan for the property you still own after he leaves. Grant tapped the 1-year contract. You could sign this and prove your plan next season. Marissa looked at the paper. For 3 years, she had accepted short renewals because saying no felt too close to losing everything Daniel had helped build. But a 1-year lease would not support the loan she needed. It would not justify planting something that took years to become useful. It would keep her moving from one deadline to another while Grant kept the right to change direction every fall. No, she said. Grant's expression tightened. You're turning down the lease? I'm turning down this lease. You have 2 children living here. I know exactly who lives here. The fan in Grant's laptop was the only sound in the room. Marissa kept both hands flat on the table. I will not borrow against my equipment and invest in your land under a contract that can disappear every year. 5 years. Review after year 3. A written block plan. I cover routine operations. You cover permanent improvements that remain with the property. We split the cost of establishing the windbreak. No. Grant looked toward Victor. Victor did not look at Marissa. The phased plan is slower, he said. It is also technically defensible. Removing the full western edge at once creates an exposure risk the other proposal does not address. Denise spoke through the laptop. What would it cost us to change tenants and lose part of a season if the transition doesn't go cleanly? Grant looked at the screen. That question did more for Marissa than any speech she could have made. The meeting lasted another hour. Grant did not apologize. Marissa did not ask him to. They settled on a 5-year lease with a formal review after the 3rd year. The dangerous southern row would come out first. The western row would remain temporarily. A new windbreak would be established beyond it. Major changes to the block plan would require written notice. Grant gathered the papers. Put the maintenance dates in writing. Marissa opened her folder. I already did. The southern row came out 2 weeks later. Marissa watched the grafted tree fall and felt worse than she had expected. She did not change her mind. The new windbreak went in along the western edge in early fall. The young plants looked too small to matter against the open sky. Caleb held the first one straight, while Marissa packed soil around its roots. How long before it blocks anything? He asked. Longer than we'd like. 2 years? More. June leaned out of the truck window. We're going to be late. Marissa looked down the line of unfinished holes. In the past, she would have worked until there was no light left, as if exhaustion could prove the orchard belonged to her. It did not belong to her. But the next 5 years of work did. She pressed the soil once more around the young tree, set the shovel in the truck bed and brushed the dirt from her gloves. Then she took her children home before dark.